Hello, welcome to Thursday. I'm Greg Avola, your host of Virtual Happy Hours. It's the third of our all-week-long UK series. We're super excited to talk to all of our great friends across the pond. I know I've said that a lot, so I apologize for that. Euphemism. Americans always say these things, but I'm going to bring in my guests here. Matthew Curtis. Matthew Curtis is the co-founder of Pellicle magazine, located in London. Matthew, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Hi, Greg. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and cheers.
Awesome. Very good. Well, like we always talk about with the show, the most important thing that we do is always have a beer. Because if we can't do it in person, let's do it virtually. So, Matthew, tell me a little about what you're drinking over there on your side.
Okay, so I've picked out a couple of beers for tonight because I drink quite fast, especially when I'm talking, and I talk a lot, so I need two beers. So the first beer I'm having is a lovely mixed fermentation saison from a great brewery called Red Willow, who are in Macclesfield, a town that is just south of Manchester. And this is quite an incredible beer. It's a 2-year-old Burgundy barrel-aged saison blended with a fresh saison, very Belgian-y like DuPont, and then blended with some local cider. So it's quite tart, a little bit acidic. There's some nice fruity esters. It's complex, but it's really balanced and really easy drinking. So it's 5.2, so the ABV isn't too crazy. And then after that, I'm going to cleanse my palate with a good Fine Ales Jarl, which is a legendary beer from Scotland. 3.8% session beer. Second ever. Nearly got myself in a lot of trouble there. Second ever UK beer brewed using Citra. And it celebrated its 10th birthday this year, but it's just gone into 440ml cans, and that's very exciting because this is normally a cask staple, and cask isn't as available as it was, or because of lockdown, or it's becoming available again. But I'm going to enjoy drinking that after I finish my saison.
Sounds good. So I found this interesting beer on my side today, looking for a great beer for this session. A lot of my beer that I usually have in my beer fridge got ruined because I lost power for almost 6 days. So it went from cold to warm, and then I was afraid for exploding cans and all that fun stuff around on the board. Yeah. So I found this particular beer. This one is called Virtual Hang, and I'll show you the little picture here of the beer itself. Has a bunch of like zoom windows on the side here. This is from a brewery called Foundation Brewing Company. I felt we do this all the time. We're doing virtual happy hour. Why not have a beer that's kind of like that? So this is amazing beer. I haven't tried it before. It's from Foundation Brewing Company, like I mentioned before. They're from Maine, Portland, Maine, and I'm excited to try them out. It's a double IPA at 8.8%. A lot of Galaxy and that was one of my favorite hops from that perspective, from that side. So I'm excited to give it a shot. So if you're out there right now and you want to crack open your beer, we'll crack them open together and pour it into your glass. Make sure you check in your beer on Untapped, and make sure you tag Untapped at home. It's a great venue to kind of let everyone know how you're safe out there, especially with everything that's going on with the world. And it's a great way to see what everyone's drinking around you from this virtual venue created that's part of the world. So, cheers to all you guys watching. Thanks for attending UK Week. Thank you, Matthew. Cheers. And thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, Greg.
Oh, wow. That's delicious.
Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying your beer just like I am. And let's get right into it. Obviously, we talk a little bit about what you're doing right now, being the co-founder of the magazine. You're a beer photographer. You do a lot of things with journalism. But in case we want to get the 60-second biography of you, tell us what you're doing in the beer world and where you're located.
So 60 seconds. Wow, I'm using them up already.
Abbreviation there, Matthew.
So the quick version is that I've been a professional beer writer and photographer since 2016. It's my full-time job. Before that, I was a beer blogger. I used to work in the musical instrument industry, and I had beer blog, and it just ran away with itself. I then started freelancing. I worked for Good Beer Hunting for about 3 years. I freelanced for a lot of beer magazines in the UK, like Ferment and Beer, which is Camera's quarterly magazine. And in 2019, myself and my good friend Johnny Hamilton set up our own magazine called Pellicle, and that's been going for just over a year now. And we do beer, but we also dip into natural wine, low intervention cider, food, because we want to bring these cultures together a bit, because we see so many parallels. And Pellicle is my baby. I love it. I probably spend too much time working on it when I should be doing freelance commissions and working on my book, which I signed my book deal, my first book deal. It's actually my second book deal, my first big book deal
Nice.
last week. And so I keep myself very, very busy.
There you go. I love it. Well, if you join us today, we're talking to Matthew Curtis, who is the co-founder of the new publication, Pellicle Magazine. We just talked a little bit about that. If you have a question for Matthew you want to ask, we'll put it up on the screen here. Use your YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter app, wherever you're watching this from, and you'll be able to ask those questions, and we'll try to get some ones on the screen. I'll start here, obviously, get us kicked off a little bit about we talked about the Pellicle Magazine. How did the inspiration start from this? We talked a little bit about this pre-show about the logo, the design, the aesthetic of it. I mean, obviously, your work in the photography world is amazing. I really inspired me a lot as well as someone who is trying to get into photography from this perspective. So, how did it all come together, blending all those talents you have for the beer and the artistic world into kind of one site?
I think I must give a shout out to the co-founder of the magazine, Johnny Hamilton, who is just one of my closest friends and just a wonderful guy. He's also a Heriot Watt Masters trained in brewing and distilling, and is a great brewer. But he came up with the idea for the magazine. We were out for some beers, and he pulled all these wine magazines out of his bag that were very aesthetically pleasing. The photography was amazing. The writing was amazing. So magazines like Pipette is a good example. Glue Glue is another. And in the UK, Noble Rot is another. And we were so impressed with what they were doing for wine and natural wine. We thought that the beer space, especially in the UK, could do with something a bit like that. And our long-term plan is actually to do a print magazine. We had planned to do it already, but COVID and budgets and lots of scary things have put that on hold. But actually, that is in progress. We are working on an issue 1. But we have the website and we have the podcast. So we work with an amazing designer called Cider Bradshaw, who is again just a friend from the London beer scene, who's an amazing artist. And we gave her this idea, like Pellicle. It's from mixed fermentation. It's Brett. It's yeast. And our logo, the coloured blobs are actually Saccharomyces cerevisiae cells, or based on, and the letters are loosely based on Brett cells. So the logo is yeast, and it's a nod to fermentation. And this is how we tie beer in with cider and wine, because we all share the wonder of fermentation. And then the idea was to be 100% consumer focused and try and celebrate the stuff that we get really excited about, because there's so much out there. There are so many small breweries that aren't getting talked about. There's so many amazing products that I'm desperate for people to know about. So it came from that enthusiasm. And so we've been going since May 2019. We've published just over 100 stories, and we're gradually growing. 20% of our readership's in the US, which is really exciting.
That's very cool.
The UK is our biggest audience, but the US, we work with a lot of freelancers. This is one of the cool things. We have a lot of contributors, and we're getting more and more people from the US saying, "Hey, I'd love to talk about this." But we've had stories from Belgium, from Australia. We're UK based with a very international focus. That's the way we see it. It's a lot of fun, a lot of stress, but it's probably the most satisfying project I've ever done. And it's still in its early years. It's a baby, so I can't wait to see what it looks like when it starts walking and running.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pulling it up on the screen for everyone to see right now. One of the things that I really enjoy about the site is the clean aesthetic look of it. You see so much editorial stuff now where it's just kind of littered with ads and littered with things. I'm on there as someone who appreciates, a design aesthetics and look and feel. Really appreciate the look of the site and the stories. Obviously, when I was looking at this before we talked, I was like, wow, look at this. The Pellicle Podcast, a search for Pliny the Elder, one of my favorite beers on the face of this earth.
Same.
And that's a picture. There's a picture of, I believe, Russian River, the old location down in Santa Rosa, of their board there. And it's an amazing place to go to if you've ever been. It's kind of located in a strip mall kind of an area. But when you walk in, there's a huge chalkboard of all these beers that you're just gushing from hearing any one of them. They have one of the largest tasting set I've ever seen. It's like 28 tasters on this huge board. It's pretty incredible. So definitely a very cool site. And like you said, only a year. I mean, we've been doing On Tap for 10 years. So I definitely understand where you've been coming from. You're not even sure what it is yet. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
From that aspect on there when it comes to this. So you also have a podcast that you do. We just highlighted it. How does that kind of structure in terms of content for the website itself? Is it more of stories that you're going to write about, but you feel like it'd be better on the audio? How do you decide which one kind of goes from a written to an audio perspective?
The idea of having a podcast as well as the website and in turn the print magazine eventually is that we found that certain people like to consume media in different ways. And what I found was that people who listen to podcasts don't spend a lot of time reading articles on their phones. So it helps us reach a different audience. And some people are saying, I like what you do, but I can't wait till I have something I can hold and read.
Yeah.
So it's all about making our content accessible, and I enjoy the audio side because my background is in audio, so I'm like quite a geek with recording. So it gives me a chance to stretch the podcast is interesting because that's solely my project. With the website, Johnny and I we've worked with over 50 freelancers,
Right.
so that's really exciting. But the podcast is like it's my little side project. That
Nice.
Johnny has a side project where he gets guests to make mixtapes, which we publish. Because he loves music, so
Right.
it's about giving ourselves because everything we do is a joint decision, but we wanted to have one element each where we get to be completely in control. But if it's not great, the other one will say you could do this a bit better. It's cool. And the podcast is only 14 episodes in. It's quite young, and I've got some adventurous ideas for doing sort of a narrative style show. And it's going to take me a while to record, but I'm interested to see where that goes. It's an experiment for better thinking.
Very cool. There's a question from RT Barstool specifically about the podcast. If you could have one guest on your podcast, who would it be? These are always the questions that you're like, if I had my favorite kid or something along those lines. But if there's one person you really wanted to talk to live on a podcast, what would that person be?
Yeah. I would love, I don't know if he's watching this. I understand he's a beer fan, but there's a comedian, my favorite comedian in the UK, a chap called Bob Mortimer, who is just one of the best, funniest guys. But he also has tweeted about enjoying beers and how he likes mosaic hops. And he's also incredibly funny. And I would love to interview him about his life in comedy over a beer, because he's a fascinating guy. So Bob Mortimer, of the comedy duo Reeves and Mortimer. I don't know if he's that known in the USA, but don't even
know ring a bell.
His brand of humor, I don't know if it would be funny to an American audience, but he records these skits on his Instagram. He has this character called Train Guy where he basically pretends to be sort of a traveling businessman, and plays to all these stereotypes. And it's mad, and it has me laughing and in tears. He's brilliant. So Bob, if you're watching, I would love to get you on the Pellicle podcast.
There you go. Very cool. Awesome. Well, let's shift gears a little bit to photography. One of the things that I find so interesting about just beer is the whole beer photography game that has really stepped up over the last couple of years. I remember when we first were building Untapped in here, we'd actually have a camera option in there, which just to rate the beer and give it a review and tell people where you are. I never thought that taking a picture of a beer would be such a thing, 10 years later. And tell us about your experience working in that industry of the need for high quality images and how it drives really attention from people looking to buy stuff from an advertising perspective.
For me, it's photography is narrative. It's another way of telling a story. So I was very lucky to work for Good Beer Hunting for just over 3 years. And the way when they launched their website, the visual side of it, the photography was very inspiring. And I was a blogger, and I was like, I've got to raise my game. I want to do that. And it was very, so before I worked for them, I was like, I want to do that. And then I worked for them and I got a lot of experience. And I spent a lot of time traveling and visiting breweries. And I find I never really get bored of it. I never get bored of seeing stainless steel. And I've seen, I've worked out to over 800 breweries, and they're all different. And I love finding a way, because essentially a brewery is quite a boring thing. It's just some metal containers and someone stirring a giant pot and kegs. And I love the challenge of trying to make that look really exciting and interesting. So, and for me, like, just great visuals just adds an extra level of expression to great writing, because writing is just my favorite thing. I would call myself a writer first and a photographer second, but I find that certainly for the way I work, the visual side of it, it's all about enhancing that narrative and bringing the person reading it deeper into the story. I have done, like, one of my jobs that I do to make a living as a professional writer, which is not a very well paid job, is I do some commercial photography for breweries and bars. And nice. That's great, because I get to also hang out and ask loads of geeky questions about beer while I'm taking photos for them. And for them, it's about, I think the reason why I get work from certain breweries is they don't want the typical, I'm going to make a pose now of the brewer taking the sample and looking up at it. There's a lot of cliche in beer photography, or there was. There's so many amazing photographers out there right now, but it's about elevating that beyond the cliche. If you look at mainstream news, whenever they report on beer in the UK, they always use this same stock image of a dirty pint glass, and I'm crying out, like, I will send you a lovely image of some beer. Like, let's move on from bad stock photography, because and this ties back into Pellicle. Images are editorial as much as the writing, so that's how I approach my photography.
Yeah, that's a good point. I even in the US, I see whenever there's a story on, like, local news, it's just like the same stock video footage of people drinking beer outside. You can't see their faces; they're just kind of sipping them like this, and that's about it. And so I definitely appreciate it. We've had a lot of people on our show that are in the beer photography world, and I think it's making it more interesting. That's why I think that having a really important design aesthetic like Good Beer Hunting and like your website as well provides just better reading experience from the user side. So it's definitely very interesting on that. Let's go back to some of the questions from the chat here. This one is, let's see here. This one is from Paul Donald, and Paul Donald asks, he said, what UK breweries use social media the best? Now, it's kind of a related question to what we were just talking about with some of the imagery that's happening. But what do you think is one of the best out there for social media when it comes to really engaging audiences with photography?
So I'll mention UK breweries, but before I mention a UK brewery, I want to say first how clear my beer is. I'm drinking it, which is nice clear beer. Cheers to clear beer.
There you go. Very good.
But Allagash in Maine, in the US, they have the best brewery social media. Those photos and, like, here's your peaceful Maine moment. It's like, yes, this is what I needed. Also, now I want to drink your beer. And they reply to you. They have a conversation with you. In the UK, it's tough to pick. I really like 5 Points Brewing in London. They've always had a really engaging tone. I really enjoyed Fine Ales, actually. And shout out to Ian Smith, who's the marketing manager who does the social media for Fine Ales, because he is a friend of mine. He was the last person I went to the pub with before our lockdown. So Fine Ales are really great. And I really like Marble Brewery in Manchester, because they're not afraid to be outspoken. They bring you into the brewery, and I see their tweets and it's like, I just want to go to your pub and drink your beer. So, but what I will say is there's so many great examples of brewery social media at the moment. It's really changed. It's just nice to see the people talking with people and not just at them. When people are saying, here's a thing. It's the ones that actually engage and, like, let's chat about our beer. That's my favorite aspect of social media. and
I agree. I
which is
think that
nice
a
to
lot
have.
of the
It's nice to have one.
exactly right. I think that a lot of times it's all about the likes and the impressions, and it's less about the interactions. You want to have that communication with an individual user. I think that I definitely agree. Allagash does a great job. I think other breweries in the U.S. that I know is Trillium as well. Does a Trillium Brewing Company does a really good job with really good artistic shots, Instagram and what have you. I just feel a lot of people navigating over to more picture based storytelling. I think that's exactly where a lot of the avenues have gone when it comes to beer and enjoying it in a different way. I mean, it's interesting for me just to kind of see people's perspective on how they look at a photo and engage with it that way. So let's go to another question here. This one's from Adrian. Adrian's a 3-time questioner. I think you've seen him every single show. So thanks, Adrian, for watching. Pick one, Matthew: beer, wine, or cider.
Beer, of course. I love wine and I love cider. I really love them both. But beer is it's the stuff of life. So it's not a difficult decision. If I had to take one to a desert island, it would absolutely be beer.
I actually agree. I'm actually not a huge wine drinker, believe it or not. I actually, for me personally, I don't like carbonated beverages, which is very odd because beer is carbonated, which is why I actually like cask most of the time more than I do like regular draft because it's less carbonated and tastes better from my perspective there. But ciders is interesting. It's kind of a debate right now, I guess you'd say. We look at on tap, we do a beer, we do ciders, and then we do meads as well. So we have all three of them listed on our service from there. But there are some people probably 5 or 6 years ago were like, oh, cider? Like an apple cider? No. It's cider, alcoholic beverage cider. And the huge popularity increase, I think, in the last couple of years, just because of the fact that people are gluten intolerant, is an alternative beverage for them to have that's have different textures, different pieces out there. So it's definitely growing in popularity. But I think personally, hard seltzers have come into the mix here and really kind of lowered ciders down from that perspective. But I'm a huge fan of ciders. Very dry ones that not too sweet because I can't do too many of them because they're just like drinking a candy. But definitely ciders are up and coming across the board. And over in the UK, is that a similar thing? Are hard seltzers as big as they are in the US overseas?
That's a great question, actually. One that hoping come up. Firstly, when all this is over, you absolutely have to come to the UK to drink cider because cider is such a wonderful example of British and English terroir, and you can get bone dry stuff from the likes of Oliver's Cider, Find and Foster, Little Pomona, Ross on Wye. It's amazing. We never had the non-alcoholic cider. That's an American thing.
Yes.
But we have a lot of sweet sort of mass-produced ciders, and then we have what you might call scrumpy rocket fuel ciders. And we've had an emerging wave of great ciders. I know that I'm going to answer your question now. Cider is going through in the UK at the moment what craft beer went through 10 years ago, and it's really exciting, which is why I'm really excited to cover it. Hard seltzer is a really interesting one because the key difference between the US and the UK is they are not classified as the same product. In the US, I believe they're allowed to be classed as beer,
which
means they pay the same tax as beer. Duty for alcohol in the UK is very different, and it's not very good. It's very high. We have the third highest rate of tax in Europe, far higher than the US. It's why alcohol is more expensive here. But hard seltzer is technically classed as made wine, so you pay wine tax. And a couple of breweries who have made them have got caught out by this, and that might mean it's not viable. So White Claw, big popular product, multi-billion-dollar product. When they've just released that in the UK, but they haven't because it's not the same alcohol level. They've released a lower alcohol level, so it's not the same product. And I'm not sure. I spend a lot of time in the US. I've been traveling to the US since my father emigrated there 10 years ago. He's watching, by the way. Hi, Dad. So I know the US well, and hard seltzer makes sense in the US because it's got that throwback lawnmower culture, and I don't see it fitting into UK culture in the same way when we have what you would call well drinks are your gin and tonics and bourbon and cokes. I don't see them replacing them on the bar in terms of what you might call an RTD, ready to drink. So I think hard seltzer will be a flash in the pan in the UK. I could be wrong, but that's my prediction because I think premixed cocktails and ciders, the mass-produced ones that aren't quite ciders, will maintain their status. And of course, beer. I hope to see beer continue to grow.
It's interesting that you made those remarks there, because I think in the United States with hard seltzer, we've seen a massive spike toward it. And I think a lot of it has to do with, summer, obviously, people are huge fans of hard seltzer. It's in the same category as beer. We have a bunch of moderators on Untapped, and when we added hard seltzer as a category, it's a lot of confusion internationally about what that really means, because, I think hard seltzers seen outside the United States are more like vodka and water or something along those lines, kind of mixed cocktails, where in the United States it's fermented with sugar. It's considered a beer product. You walk down the aisle and you see your typical beer, then you see all your hard seltzers there. And the interesting, a good point about the taxation on these things, and that's just gonna not prevent it. And how what the ABV is for the White Claws over in London, because they're like 5.4 here. Are they much lower, or what is the
4.5 is what White Claw is in the UK, and the tax is tiered with the strength of the product. So so Lagunitas IPA is a very big product in the UK, but they don't do it at 6.2, they do it at 5.6. And Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, they don't do it at 5.6 on draft, they do it at 5. So there's a lot of people use that UK duty loophole, because duty for beer is geared towards low strength beers, because that's what beer was, certainly when they wrote these laws, not exclusively to placate the historians, but the taxation of beer, I don't know if we're going to get into it tonight, but it's a big conversation in the UK at the moment. But it's very old, very messy legislation.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just get right into it. I know there's been a topic of discussion a lot and I'll bring this question up from Richard, and says, do you think, Matt, and the UK government will reverse the small brewers relief decision? And maybe for those who don't know exactly what that is, kind of describing what that project is. And, I've seen it talked numerous times with some of the UK beer folks, but what's your perspective here on this situation and what it is?
First, I love that you had that question ready to go. Thank you for the question, Richard. So essentially, progressive duty relief was introduced in 2002 by Gordon Brown, who was the Labour Prime Minister. Our version, Labour are our Democrats, kind of. Let's not go too far into that.
That's fine.
Going down a dark road.
I need another beer for this discussion. So
So 2002, they introduced a rate that any brewer making less than 5,000 hectoliters a year pays 50% less duty on their beer. And this was designed to solve the problem of economies of scale, because when you get to a certain size, you can buy ingredients in bulk, you can make bigger batches, and the economies of scale are on your side. And it didn't right away. There were around just under 800 breweries in 2002 in the UK. And then it took a few years, but in 2009, 2010, it started to happen. I guess Brewdog were an early example of this in 2007 when they started. But now we're at about 2,250 breweries. And most of these, about 1,760 are under 5,000 hectoliters. So that's, for perspective, I don't know about the US barrels, but it's 880,000 pints. The problem is, if you went beyond that, between 5,000 and 10,000 hectoliters, the duty went like that. It was a cliff. You had to grow from about 5,000 to about 20, 30,000 for it to make expansion any sense. So it was only a few breweries. A good example is Beavertown, now half owned by Heineken, but they smashed through that, and that's so you have to be aggressive, bro. And then when you're making all that beer, you have to sell it. So I believe that system above 5,000 hectoliters needs addressing. It needs smoothing to allow stable, sensible growth. But a lobbying group, which sadly is from so many of the traditional breweries that I love and I am boycotting at the moment because I support an infrastructure of lots of great, brilliant independent breweries. They want the threshold to be reduced to 2,100 hectoliters. So you start losing your relief from 2,100 hectoliters, and there's about 150 breweries in between that gap, and they will instantly have to raise their prices. It could put them under. As an example, a brewery making 5,000 hectoliters of beer a year, that's at 4.3%, would have to pay an extra £33,000 a year, which, because of the situation, the pandemic, that's enough to put a brewery under. That's a senior member of brewing staff. So it will damage the market to the benefit of those with economies of scale on their side, and it's based on old data. So to Richard's question, unfortunately, we have a right-wing government that supports these bigger businesses. So at the moment, no, I don't think they will reverse the decision. But that's why lobbying is so important. That's why I've been trying to get involved and be active in getting people to sign this petition. There is a petition. I will share the link on my Twitter when this is over. If you want to support small breweries, you can sign. If it gets to 100,000 signatures, they have to. This is an official government petition. They have to legally debate it in Parliament. So I'll share that link on my Twitter when this is over. But I'm not going to go. I could speak about it for hours. It's a very complex subject. I'll be on Twitter after this is over if anyone asks me any questions. But no, sadly, Richard, at the moment, I don't think so. But I think if you are a brewer, please join and support SIBA, the Society of Independent Brewers, our Brewers Association. And if you are a consumer, sign a petition, write to your MP, and we want to keep the great, thriving, vital small brewery market alive, because it's so tough for them at the moment. It's tough for everyone, but I want to support these small businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think just given where we're at with COVID and things of that nature, there are already so many breweries that are already affected greatly by these things. It doesn't seem like it's a opportunity for them to even benefit from something like this. It just seems like it's the wrong time to even have this go into effect. But again, that's just an outsider talking from my perspective, and I appreciate your insights there on that piece. Let's do a few more questions here. Let's see here. This one is from Rob Edwards, and Rob Edwards says, in 5 to 10 years, you think we'll see more thought being put in a beer list in restaurants in the UK?
Hi, Rob. Great question. So yes, I do, because they'll read Pellicle and go, "Oh, we need some of this beer." No. I genuinely do, because it's already happening, and the restaurant industry is like the brewing industry. The really great restaurants. I'm wearing a St. John t-shirt, which is my favorite London restaurant, actually. These are like the small breweries of the restaurant world, and St. John has embraced great beer, as have a lot of London restaurants, as have a lot of restaurants around the country, because beer is becoming more visible, more accessible, and waiters, servers are beginning to understand it better. Same with cider as well. So I think going to a restaurant and seeing a good beer, even going out for a local curry and seeing a local lager or kolsch from a brewer, that will become a norm. You might not have a beer list of like 20 beers. You might have 2 beers, but it'll be a local lager and a local pale ale, or a local stout maybe. But the Hawksmoor restaurant chain in London and Manchester is a great example. High-end steak restaurant, but they always carry Colonel beers. They have done for years. And through that, other restaurateurs have gone, "Oh, this Colonel's good. We've got to get some of that." So it's a ripple effect. I know there are some good distributors who are talking to the right people, and getting these beers out there. So yes, that's the long answer. I only deal in long answers, but it's good that this one is going to be a positive. Yes.
I definitely agree. I think in the United States too, this is more of a differentiating experience. I'm not sure how it is over in the UK as well, but there are so many restaurants out there right now, and beer, like you said, they're becoming way more relevant in this area. People want that experience. They just don't want to go to a nice restaurant and have a standard run-of-the-mill beer. They want something special that's paired or even moved along the line. So it's forcing the restaurants to kind of think outside the box, and what we call the standard 6 in the United States, of your standard tap that you see all across the board. So I definitely agree as well, Rob, that this is something that if you want to make it or you want to differentiate your restaurant to somebody else, you're going to have to find a way to do that. And beer obviously is a lower market basket size than wine or other areas. It's something you can get into that I feel like would be really, really good on this front, on this area. So great question.
Hybrids. Sorry to interject, but
no
beer wine hybrids, beer cider hybrids, they have the potential to be really big. Beer wine hybrids. I had a lovely beer from Burning Sky in Sussex the other night called Grand Reserve, which is their cuvee sour aged on Pinot Noir skins, and that would go like that and some roast duck. That would be incredible. So there you go. So the beers are out there.
Very good. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for being part of the show today. We're super excited that you were able to join us and have the bookend of our amazing UK week. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of tell people where they can find you on the interwebs, a little bit more about anything else you wanted to share as we sign off here.
Okay, so I'm most active on Twitter and to some extent Instagram at Total Curtis, Curtis being my surname, and follow Pellicle Mag, www.pelliclemag.com. It's a great beer website with 100 articles for you to explore about some fantastic beers, amazing producers, but there's also some wine articles. There's also some cider articles. You might find something new that you didn't know you were interested in yet. So I really hope people find Pellicle and read that. And then in about a year's time, my first book called Modern British Beer will hopefully be out. I'm about to start work on that. Doing all the words and photography, and I've got 6 months to make that a thing. So keep an eye out for that. And before that, fingers crossed, I've got a guide about London pubs coming out. So it's been very challenging through lockdown. So that might appear before Christmas or it might appear just after. But I'm also working on a book called The Opinionated Guide to London Pubs. And I'll leave it there. But please visit Pellicle. And just to let everyone know, I'm going to pop on Twitter after this. So if you didn't get your question answered, come and just tweet me and we can have a chat for the next half an hour or so.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Thank you all for watching. And thanks again, Matthew. And we'll be in touch and appreciate your insights.
Cheers, Greg. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching our UK week. I know I had an amazing time. I wanted to go visit over to the UK so badly now. Unfortunately, we cannot do that due to the COVID-19 virus there, but hope you'd enjoy our week this week. We'd love to hear your feedback on what you like, what you didn't like. Let us know at media@untapped.com. It's a great way for us to be able to kind of hear what you want to see. Maybe we'll do a different week for a different country. Who knows? Next week, we'll go back to our regular scheduled programming. We're going to be doing a reschedule of Matt Galligan, who was the original one last Tuesday. He'll be on Monday, and then we'll have our 2 new guests next week. Julia Hertz will be on Tuesday, and she is the original the Brewers Association. She used to be over there, and it'll be a great conversation with her about her new role and everything she's working on. And then we have other guests as well. So check us out at untapped.tv, and you'll see all the guests that are on there and everything that we do. So we're going back to 7 p.m. shows starting on Monday next week. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good night in Britain, and have a good afternoon in the U.S. Cheers.